This segment today is me giving you what I think about privatization of state corporations, and I hope that once you listen to me at the end of this video that you will have your own opinion over which you can pick up this conversation offline. The Kenyan government is considering to privatize 11 state corporations, and as it is expected because of the macroeconomic conditions of Kenya right now, the people have not taken it positively or lightly for that matter. And the conversations around the internet is that the present government or the people who are running the current government are looking for just opportunities to loot everything that they can get their hands on. Now, my brothers and sisters, we are informed people, we are educated people, we have gone to school for a purpose. And sometimes, before we come up with conclusions and we make judgments on issues, we are required to think. And we are required to consume the relevant pieces of information with a lot of understanding and detail. Then we can be allowed now to make our conclusions. Now, this segment today is me giving you what I think about privatization of state corporations. And I hope that once you listen to me at the end of this video, that you will have your own opinion over which you can pick up this conversation offline. Now, number one, what is a state corporation? A state corporation is a government entity that borders between regulation and entrepreneurial or enterprising activities. These are entities that are allowed to do both responsibilities of regulating a sector and also engaging in business development activities. That means that they can engage in buying and selling, production and making of profits. They can generate income, which in turn will generate profits for the government of Kenya. Now, these state corporations, therefore, are in direct competition with other private entities within the same spaces that they operate in. Understand? Now, let's come back. Why were state corporations set up? It is important to know the reason. Back in 1963, the government of Kenya saw the need to set up state corporations. And the reason for that was that at that particular, we had just gotten our independence. There was not so much development or growth that had happened in the private sector. And as such, the government saw the need that the people still needed services. And these services at that particular point in time, the companies that existed at that time could not handle the capacity needed. The private companies had not developed so much to be able to provide the services that the people needed. And the government saw the need because the government had the machinery and the resources. So the need to directly involve itself in business and economic development activities. And that is why state corporations were set up. Now, what has happened over time is that the private sector has come up significantly. And it has established itself now in a way that it can provide some of these publicly needed services very efficiently, more efficient than even the government state corporations that we have. And on the other hand, because of that, government corporations have struggled to keep up with the pace at which some of these private entities are moving. And the reason is private entities have resources backed. Private entities have investments that are being done on them every year. And over time, the government has reduced or has struggled to keep pace with investing more money into some of these state corporations. So the state corporations that are currently there are not able, number one, to keep up with the technology that is now available in the market. They are not able to be run efficiently because remember, the best talents, the best machinery, the best information is being utilized in the private space. And as such, most of these state corporations, the enterprising side of these state corporations have run into losses. Most of them are not generating money as they should. And even some of them have needed the government to come in through the exchequer almost on an yearly basis to keep them afloat. Now, at a time when the country is suffering a lot from lack of finances, when the government is pressed for money, it doesn't make economic sense for it to keep transferring money to a state corporation that is not generating anything, a state corporation that has now become a cost center, A state corporation that is not efficient but still needs more money year in, year out. Now, I'll take you back slightly to the beginning of the year. I had explained to you that the president of Kenya had actually visited the IMF and he was given a facility by the name RSF. It is a sustainability facility where the government of Kenya is able to manage to keep the country afloat as it tries to implement some of its long-term policies. But one of the conditions that IMF had given the president when he visited them in the course of this year was that there are some economic policies that he has to implement. There are some stringent measures that he has to take, and some of which was to close down or to transfer, to privatize some of these state corporations that are milking the government of money and yet they are not generating anything. And that is why you see the government of Kenya right now has moved. So it was something that had already been discussed with the IMF, and the government of Kenya had agreed that some of the measures they were going to take are measures like this. So the president of Kenya, through the Ministry of Finance or the Treasury, has now decided to take action on some of these companies. And when you see or you hear the names of some of these companies, you will clearly understand why it is important for the government to do that. Now, while I also recognize that the public is right on wondering where this money will go. Because remember, when you liquidate assets, when you sell your assets, you are getting that money one-off. When you transfer shares to a private entity, they will pay you, yes. What will happen is you will get money on a one-off basis. And then that money, in the event that that money is not utilized well, in the event that there is mismanagement of that money, the money doesn't come back again. You were paid once and that money is now in the government coffers. And this can be a very, very good opportunity for thieves and for corrupt leaders to take advantage. And that's why on that front, I think the people are very right to worry. But on the side of worrying about the actual privatization is actually a good move by the government, and it has been practiced across the world. So many countries have done it. Because at one point, once a state corporation has achieved what it was supposed to achieve, then it just makes sense for it to be privatized. Now, to counter the worry on the corruption bit of it, I will remind you this. When the government privatizes most of its entities, it doesn't give away all the shares. It doesn't sell everything. Privatization just means now the majority shareholder or the controlling interest of that company is in the hands of a private entity. But the government most of the time still preserves its ownership within the company or within the state corporation. And what will happen is, in the event that the privatization actually successfully goes through, then the government will be able to generate more income. And I think our president or the government is not foolish enough for them to sell off everything. A lot of the ownership or the shares will be preserved within the government, and they will be able to generate the fruits of an efficient management that comes with privatization. Understand? Now, having told you that, let me now bring you to the reality of some of these companies that have now been privatized. And most of you could even have forgotten about them. And why? Because they are probably they have lived beyond what they were supposed to be doing within the government. And it's about time now someone takes over these companies. Company number one, Kenya Literature Bureau. Now, Kenya Literature Bureau is owned by the government 100%. But now the government says they want to privatize Kenya Literature Bureau because that industry, number one, is mature. The private sector has enough publishers to be able to provide services to the public. And the government is looking at generating a lot of revenue that will come from that business. That means that the government is not selling all its shares. Yeah? Even though KLB has been making profits, it's a profitable entity. You can only imagine what will happen when the government now gives it on to private sector. Kenyatta International Convention Center, KICC, and this is what has touched the people mostly because we associate so much with this convention center. It is a landmark. It is a building that everyone knows, everyone has seen it across the world, And Kenyans don't know how they are going to now start telling people that building is no longer a government's building and it's a private entity. But the good thing is that it will not live where it is. It will not be removed. It is still there, and it is still an identity. And it is still a landmark in the country of Kenya, and we can definitely still identify with it. Now, why does the government see the need of selling or privatizing Kenyatta International Convention Center? Number one, while it has been operating well, Kenyatta International Convention Center is past its standards. It is at a level where it needs someone to take it to the next level. Because when you look even across the region, some of the convention centers that are coming up, it's about time that now someone takes over KICC and moves it to the next level. And also, it has been relying on the government a lot for maintenance and for operational services. And that is money that has been draining the exchequer. So it's about time that building is privatized. And now you will even see that it will become better after that. Number three, we have National Oil Corporation of Kenya. This one, I think personally, it was about time. It was about time because what National Oil Corporation of Kenya, NOC, was supposed to be achieving, number one, it was supposed to help in the stabilization of the prices within the oil or the fuel space. It has not achieved that. National Oil Corporation has been making losses significantly, and it has been relying on government bailout year in, year out. Another factor as well is even the stations themselves, even the client experience. If you have driven across National Oil Corporation's stations, you will see the difference between the private ones and those ones. And I think you are not even attracted enough to go and fuel within some of these spaces. So National Oil Corporation of Kenya, it was about time. And I personally think that it's time. The government owned 100% of NOC, and definitely they will not sell everything coming out of that. Then we have the Kenya Seed Company Limited. Now, Kenya Seed Company Limited is also 53% owned by the government. It has been profitable. But the industry has now matured. There is so many companies within that space that are providing more reliable, more efficient services to the farmers. And it was about time that Kenya Seed Company Limited got privatized. Mwea Rice Mills. This one as well, it's about time because the cooperative society within the Mwea irrigation scheme is strong. It has grown strong enough to be able to run on its own and provide the country and the people what the kind of services that Mwea Rice Mills was supposed to be achieving. The government owned around 55% of Mwea, but the thing I like about this is that I am almost certain that the cooperative society around Mwea will be the ones who will buy this one. And I hope the people who are leading that cooperative society are already making plans to be able to buy this because it will be to their own advantage. Yeah. And the same sentiments will apply to Western Kenya Rice Mills Limited, which the government owns around 74%. And it has been making losses, this one. It has been making losses, everyone knows that. And it was about time. But as well, within the Western Kenya, there are around Ahero, there are so many cooperative societies that have developed over there, the farmers' cooperative societies. And I really hope that one of them will be able to purchase and to take over the control of the Western Rice Mills Limited. Now, we have the Kenya Pipeline Company, 100% owned by the government. Now, why is it so important to privatize KPC? Number one, KPC is a monopoly. And it has been a monopoly for quite a while now. The problem with a government entity that is the regulatory entity and as well as the monopoly, there is a conflict of interest. And as such, the people who lose out on such things are the people. And I personally think it was a good move to privatize Kenya Pipeline Company. And there will be so many people who will be interested in this. And I already feel like we are going to see some changes within the pipeline space and basically the fuel space. because KPC has been operating profitably, and it has not even relied on the exchequer, number one, for any support. That means that it is a sustainable entity, and you can only imagine if private individuals will take over the control of KPC and how much that will become. New Kenya Cooperative Creameries. This one has died many times and it has been resurrected so many times. And also, the kind of space that KCC has been operating in, it is a mature market now, and I think it was past its time. Whatever the government was trying to achieve with KCC, I think it already did, and it was about time. And even if you look around, when you go to do shopping, you can see the number of entities that are already in existence in this kind of space, and the kind of competition that is around the milk industry. And you can already tell that it was just about time for new KCC to be privatized. And you will see a better performance from new KCC. It has been profitable, for that matter. New KCC has been profitable, but it has also been relying on government for bailout so many times. And it was about time. Number 9, we have the numerical machining complex. This one, most people don't know much about it, but the government owns around 51% of NMC, and it is a loss-making entity that it was supposed to be doing manufacturing and processing of steel. Yeah, and it has been making losses, and it has been having serious poor financial performance, and the government of Kenya has had to rescue it so many times. And for me as well, 51%, it was already not so much owned by the Kenyan government, even though the government owned a significant portion of it, 51%, it is about time this one was privatized because it's a cash cow. Number 10, Kenya Vehicle Manufacturers Limited, KVM. I have not even heard anything significant this one has done. And I will not have so much to talk about it because the government of Kenya owned 35% of it. It has been loss-making for over years, so many years. And the steel industry is already mature. There is so many companies that are doing steel manufacturing. And I think we will not feel anything, any gap with this one. And as a matter of fact, it can only get better. And of course, our very own and our very adorable and lovely RIVATEX East Africa Limited. I only remember RIVATEX with football, but I also know that RIVATEX is one of those brands that are very well identified within the Eldoret space, town, and the region, the North Rift region. And as such, it was owned 99% by the government through Moi University, and it has been significantly making losses. The government of Kenya, through the former president Uhuru Kenyatta, tried to rescue it, tried to bring it back, but I think William Ruto's government has seen that it's now about time that RIVATEX was privatized. The industry it operates in is now mature, and there's a lot of attraction from the private sector. So many people need this company, and I'm sure it is going to get buyers or private sector individuals who will be interested in it. Those are the 11 companies that the state corporations that the Kenyan government is looking at privatizing. Now, I'll leave you with this point. I have read so much about billionaires across Africa, and one of the elements I identified is in their stories. They say how they took over a state corporation and decided to change it completely and run it privately. Most of them have bought a state corporation when they needed machinery, when they needed space, when they needed machinery that is already in existence, albeit not in very good condition, that just needed to be upgraded. And I can give you examples. Aliko Dangote, the richest man in Africa, if you read about his story, you will realize that when he was in the rice industry, he bought government old machinery and old corporations, and that is what he used as a basis of setting up his rice manufacturing company. If you look at our very able billionaire here in Tanzania, he's called the Sir of Dar, the richest man in Tanzania, also did the same with the cotton manufacturing industry. He took over a cotton company corporation in Tanzania that has been left with the government, and it was not doing nothing much, and they purchased it. And the reason why all these billionaires were doing this is because at one point as a businessman, you have to do something called vertical integration. Vertical integration is where you start to control almost every element of the business that you are in. And one of the main areas is the manufacturing component, which you rely on land and machinery, already existing machinery that just needs to be upgraded. So I'm so sure, while the machinery within these state corporations are outdated, I am certain that with an injection of private sector money, some of these companies are going to do so well, and the government of Kenya will be able to generate significantly a lot of money from them. And since they will still own a piece of it, I think it's a good move. And it is a move that was started by our very own President Mwai Kibaki. So Ruto is not doing anything new. He's actually continuing what our super economist President Mwai Kibaki started. So I personally don't think Kenyans are very honest when it comes to such things, because they don't go into details to try and understand why some of these things are being done. Because what is the alternative? The alternative is we still continue having KICC. We still continue having within the budget of the government of Kenya, having money that is being given to KICC, but for what if it is making significant losses? Why should we still have money going into new KICC? Why? Why should we have a lot of allocation from the government to companies like KPC? Why should we have money going into companies like RIVATEX, companies that have consistently generated losses, and every single year they need to be bundled out of their issues? Now, this is a conversation that I know will continue, and I know Kenyans will pick it up and they will run with it. But for those who are informed, those who know what they are talking about, privatization is the right way, and it is the stage where most state corporations reach once the industry that they were operating in has matured, and there are enough players within the industry to provide the services to the people, and the people will not feel a pinch or will not feel a lack of services thereof. Thank you very much. My name is Duncan Robert, and I am asking you, please subscribe to this channel, because you will get very detailed, you will get information on economics, on finance, on businesses, on accounting, in very well simplified kind of a format. And I can assure you, once you listen to these segments that we have here, you probably wouldn't need to do so much research, because I will have given you exactly what you need to know. And that is my session for today. I look forward